A very good morning and Jai Shri Krishna to all our viewers. This is Vidya Udeshi on behalf of Team Drshtikon, extending a warm welcome to all of you to the 30th webinar of Drshtikon Talks. We hope that you are taking all measures to stay safe and healthy. At Drshtikon Talks, we bring you to eminent Bhatia speakers and experts.
Vidhi, you are gone on mute and your video is off.
A very good morning and Jai Shri Krishna to all our viewers. This is Vidya Udeshi on behalf of Team Drshtikon, extending a warm welcome to all of you to the 30th webinar of Drshtikon Talks. We hope that you are taking all measures to stay safe and healthy. At Drshtikon Talks, we bring you to eminent Bhatia speakers and experts to share their knowledge and valuable experiences with us. For this, we conduct a live webinar of 1 hour or a conversation with experts of different fields to widen our knowledge base and increase awareness. As today being the 30th session of Drshtikon Talks, we would like to take this opportunity to thank you all for your continued patronage, and we hope to move ahead by imparting greater value to all those who attend our webinar. As we want the webinar to be conducted smoothly, we request you all to post your questions in the chat box. Our moderator will take up the questions after the speaker completes the talk. Any unanswered questions will be answered by mail on a later date. Also requesting you to switch off your mics and videos. Our speaker for today is Captain Chintan Bhatia. Requesting Archana ji to introduce our speaker to you. Over to you, Archana ji.
Hello, Namaskar, Jai Shri Krishna. I am Archana Sampat, and on behalf of Drshtikon, I welcome our guest for the 30th webinar. It's an honor and a proud moment for me that I'll be sharing the platform with a real-life hero. Our hero, our guest, has come India in 2008 on the Airbus B320 aircraft, a domestic and international areas like Far East and Gulf. He is a BSc graduate, IT, in the year 2000. Mumbai University. He worked in I2M, to name a few. He is an IT consultant to many startups and now has his own startup related to healthcare, IT Healthcare, the Project Health. Founder of exam portal victortango.co, founder member and secretary of the Khandwala Alumni Association since 15 years. Currently, Consulting Director General of Civil Aviation, Ministry of Civil Aviation. Now, how does all this make him a real-life hero? A great moment for India when Vande Bharat mission was announced, and even a greater moment for us as our guest was a part of it. During the first wave of COVID, when the whole country was in lockdown, our hero flew his flight to deliver medical supplies, medicines, and ventilators. The Vande Bharat mission brought home stranded hundreds of Indians. Today, he will be expressing his views about taking up your career as a pilot and will also be giving an in-flight experience to us. All opinions expressed by the guest speaker are solely their current opinions and do not reflect the opinions of Air India or DGCA, and that they do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position. He always says, "Welcome aboard. This is your captain speaking." Today, I say, "Welcome aboard. This is Drshtikon Talks speaking." So, ladies and gentlemen, fasten your seatbelts and please welcome our guest who made us proud Captain Chintan Bhatia, Commander, Air India. The moderator for today's session is Dhaval Bhatia. So over to you, Dhaval, now.
Thank you, Archana. And welcome, Captain Bhatia, on board.
Good morning.
Good morning. You always welcome your passengers. It's our time to welcome you on board.
Thank you so much.
On behalf of Team Drshtikon, myself, Dhaval Bhatia, would like to invite Captain Chintan Bhatia for the session today. It is always said for people, for a common man, sky is the limit. And those who love aviation, sky is their home. So, Captain, we would like to hear from you something about you as well as how sky is your home.
So thank you, Team Drshtikon, to get me on board and giving me this opportunity to speak in front of so many Bhatias in the community. It's a very proud moment for me that I have been able to achieve because of whatever we have as a community. Since you're speaking about flying and it being sky being my home, it started off very young when I was small. I am born and brought up in Dubai, and every summer vacation, my parents used to bring me to India for our holidays, and that's how the fascination of flying has started. Because it was amazing to see such a big machine to be taking over the skies and taking you across so many miles at such high speed. So that's how my fascination with aviation has started. Of course, with time, once I cleared my graduation, after which I had started doing, proactively working towards studying my as a pilot. And today I am here and I'm having a great time. It's a wonderful job. I'm being, what I always tell everyone is I'm being paid for seeing the best views in the world. It's amazing to be at 39,000 feet and see the sky and getting paid for that. So I think I enjoyed every moment. There's not a day where I don't get up energetic to take off an aircraft.
Great to know that. So as you expressed your journey that after your BSc, you started your pilot training.
That's right.
Yeah, hope your journey was smooth from BSc to pilot training and it was as desired by you.
Of course, it is. So there is a part where it is more of an unstructured training course. There is no syllabus or something like that. But it depends. There are people or there are my colleagues who have gone through rough patches. It's not like you're joining a college. You're going to get in at a time and get out at a time. And the moment you get out of college, you're going to get a job. So it's a pretty wavy thing. But I think that is important because it also gives you a sense of how aviation in India works, which is important. Otherwise, you will really not accept a lot of things. And aviation is so dynamic that it's not something which is going to be constant. So yes, it is a part of the journey.
Great to know that. So, Captain, can you tell our audience that if someone is willing to pursue a course and pilot or flying an aircraft, what are the basic qualifications and what are the necessities that they need to fulfill?
Okay. So the first thing which is required, there are a lot of wrong notions which are going around in the system. Like, you cannot have glasses or spectacles, which is not true. Today, it's not possible that pilots are not having glasses. Of course, there's a limitation, but one of the biggest challenges what I've seen people is medical health and fitness. When we say health, it does not only mean physical fitness, it also means mental fitness, which has become very important. So that's an important aspect. That's the first thing I suggest. Get your medical test done as per the requirement and see that there are no illnesses or anything which you have not seen over time. Because after you spend so much money, you do not want to then come to a point where now I have identified some medical problem because of which you cannot go forward. So one is medical. Second is minimum requirement in terms of studies is you need to be 10+2 and you need to have maths and physics as an alternate subject in your 12th standard. So that is the requirement eligibility criteria to be applicable. After which you, the first thing what happens is you start applying to the DGCA, which is the governing and the regulatory body of Indian aviation.
Right.
You give exams. There are papers which you need to give. And along with that, you can start your flying. What happens in your flying is you basically start off with a small aircraft where you're learning the basics of flying. How does an aircraft fly? What is wind? What is velocity? How does stalling speed? There are a lot of technical aspects required. So that all you learn on a small aircraft, which is known as a Cessna or a, other small aircrafts which are there across the globe. So with that, you can get the first license is known as a private pilot license, which is called a PPL. But the PPL has a limitation. PPL is only for your own self. It's like you are having a driving license. You can take an aircraft and fly on your own. After the PPL, you come down, you complete more hours, you get more experience in the small aircraft, where you will now get what is known as a commercial pilot license or a CPL. When you get a CPL, it basically means that you have completed the requirements of the governing body for becoming a commercial pilot. Now, after this, basically what happens is you are eligible to apply for jobs across the companies which are having an opening. Now, to understand, the aircraft which we have trained on and the aircraft we are going to fly are not the same. So the moment you have decided that I'm going to join a particular airline, they have a particular fleet. When I say fleet, I mean an aircraft type. That aircraft type you need to be trained on. Now that can happen in two ways. Either the airline themselves train you for that fleet, or they will ask you that you go to an authorized school and get the training for that particular aircraft done for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
That basically when you get an aircraft type trained, that is known as a rating. That means, like as you have introduced, I am an Airbus 320 pilot. That means I have been trained and rated on the Airbus 320. What this also means is that I cannot go and fly a Boeing 737 or a Boeing 787 or even an Airbus 380 because I'm only trained on a particular aircraft. It is, every aircraft is different. They have a lot of technical aspects required to be known so that this training is done. Now, this training, what we do on an aircraft is usually done in a simulator.
Right.
You can either do it in India or generally you could go abroad and do it in international. Once you are done, you come back, you join the airline. The airline will further train you on their procedures, their company policies, their company manuals. There are a lot of other trainings which are there, small trainings like low visibility training is there. There is extended time over seat training. So these are the trainings which will happen, which is of course a part of the airline induction course. And once you are done, then you basically come and sit on the right seat, which makes you a co-pilot.
Great.
So this is your journey from zero to becoming a co-pilot.
Yeah, I had a question in mind which you already covered, that if you are type rated, then you can only fly that particular machine. Because unlike driving, that when you go to a driving school and you get a four-wheeler license of a lighter vehicle, then you can drive any vehicle. But in aviation, as you covered, you have to get the type rating done and you need to do minimum hours of simulation flying of that particular machine.
Correct.
Great. So like the MBA examination, the CAT and the CET and other examinations for MBA, are there any particular exams that any person needs to go through for getting into this course?
So basically, I will explain you. There are three types of exams which you will encounter in your journey towards becoming a commercial pilot. Mm-hmm. One is the exam which the regulatory body requires, right? That is, your government of India has specified that these are the papers required.
Right.
This is standard for all. Everyone has to give it when they want to become a CPA. The second exam comes when you are going for an interview. Now, nowadays it has become a norm that the airline will want you to do two things. One, give their interview. Before giving their interview, they want to give a psychometric test which analyzes your decision making capability and how fit you are mentally. And along with that, they also have a written examination. When I say written examination, all examinations in aviation are MCQ or multi-choice questions. Okay. Minimum passing percentage is 70%, which is pretty high. So if you are a 100-mark paper, it is 70 marks.
Right.
And so coming back, airline will have these psychometric test and their written evaluation, which will happen. That's the second exam you will generally give. And the third exam which you give is once you go for your type rating. You will have your theory lectures, which you attend, after which you will have a set of examinations you will have to give for getting that type rating cleared before you start flying the aircraft. So generally, these are the three examinations. There is no such as a CET or a CAT, which is required. So that would be probably more on for the airline, joining an airline point of view.
Great. So, Captain, there are a lot of acronyms which are used in aviation industry, like the DGCA, MOCA, CPL, PPL, SPL. If you can just give the overview to the audience, because I'm sure that audience would be delighted to know the full form of these acronyms.
So, starting with basically, as I discussed earlier, the Ministry of Civil Aviation, or what we call as MOCA, is the apex body in the country which handles your whole aviation in India. That is the ministry. Under the ministry, as per our rules and regulations in India, there has to be a regulatory body who will look and maintain the oversight function of what the ministry is guiding them to. So for that reason, they have a body known as DGCA, which is Director General of Civil Aviation.
Okay.
Now, the role of DGCA is very pivotal because they are making the rules and they are implementing them also. They are also approving aircrafts to come inside India. They are also allowing special operations to be permitted. They are opening new airports. They handle the major part where a CPL holder or a pilot will be interacting with them. They also handle the licensing part where you have to give the examination, your issue of licenses, your renewal of licenses. All this comes under the whole body of DGCA. Going forward, you said SPL. So I will just take you that getting a pilot license, there are 4 stages. One is your SPL, which is a student's pilot license, which basically allows you to sit in an aircraft as a trainee. After that, once your first step, you clear your number of hours, you get to a level of PPL, which is private pilot license, where you can fly yourself alone. After which you go ahead, get your CPL, which is commercial pilot license. And after CPL, after you have gained a certain number of hours, for moving from a first officer to a commander of an aircraft, you need to give an ATPL. Now, ATPL is Air Transport Pilot License, where you are eligible to sit on the left seat and command an aircraft. So these are the 4 abbreviations in your terminology of licensing. Now, the main thing is that there are so many jargons and there are so many abbreviations over here. If we'll cover that, it's going to be, we'll go on the move, we will.
Definitely. So the next question, I would like to break it into 3 parts. Okay. One is from the audience perspective, if someone wants to get into flying an aircraft, what is the maximum age till when they can think of? That is first part. Second part is what is the general course duration and what will be the fees like? And the third aspect is because there are a lot of private flying schools as well as government organized flying schools. What would be your views to opt for?
Okay. Great. So these are the standard questions which I also get when our colleagues or friends or who want to join aviation, they come into it. So the age is generally preferred that you are young and you join in, because there would be places where you would get stuck at multiple times. One, first is the medical aspect. If you are very old, even say 35 or above, then it means that you are already in your peak of your health, and from there you have only your basically your age for flying officially is 58 years, after which you can extend to 65 years. So getting into aviation very late is not very suggestible, and generally young people are joining aviation. So age as young as possible better. There is no limitation in terms, you need to be having 10 plus 2, which is a minimum requirement, so your 18 years is going to be guaranteed.
Right.
For your uh, SPL and PPL, you could start training earlier. The moment you become 18, you can get it issued, so that's not a requirement, but that's the age what we look at.
Okay.
Now, next question you asked was course duration. What
Yeah.
happens in the course duration is that, as I mentioned earlier, there is no systematic course which is in place. That means all your aspects of your journey are independent of each other. Now, you could make your own sequence that I would want to do my exams and then do my flying and then get my license issued. Or some people say, I will do my flying first, then I'll give my exams, then I'll get my license issued. Or someone does a mix where they're doing flying also and they're giving exams also.
Okay.
But in total, I see on an average, I can say it will, to get your license completely from A to Z, it will be around 18 to 20 months is what you are looking at.
Right.
So that's with the course duration. Now, fees. There are two types of fees which get involved over here, as we discussed earlier. One is that your fees for your basic flying, which you do 200 hours, you need to do. So that is one fees when you do it in your flying school.
Right.
That generally nowadays is coming around 35 lakh rupees. Okay.
Okay.
And the second part, what happens is that when you get inducted into an airline, they ask you that you get a specific airline aircraft rating, which will again cost you another 15 lakhs or so. So your total flying cost is around 50 lakh rupees. Over and above, you have expenses like getting your license, giving your exams, you're doing ground classes for studying for your exams. So that's going to be additional.
Right.
Generally, now what has happened, the good part is that all your loans earlier during our time, they never used to allow. Aviation was very risky, so they never used to give loans for that. Banks never used to give, but now banks are also open to giving loans for aviation because it is now an official course from the government of India.
Great.
School wise, there are government schools, there are private schools, and one more category which is there are foreign schools.
Right.
So there is not much difference in terms of how the school is. Is it good or bad? What could be different is the way the management functions.
Right.
All because again, what happens is your 200 hours of
Chintan bhai, I guess we are unable to hear you. There's a bandwidth issue. If you can just Chintan bhai, are you able to hear me? Uh, Audience, I guess there's some network issue. Just give us some time. We'll get back to you.
yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Great.
So
Yeah,
I was
yeah,
saying about government schools versus private schools.
that's right.
Basically, as a management in a private company versus a government company, that would differ because the syllabus is very well defined in terms of flying. So that really doesn't change. There is, as I also mentioned, there is an option of foreign schools also. Now, what happens in foreign schools is that because their aviation is much more advanced in terms of their growth, they have already gone ahead a couple of years. You might be able to learn what is really new in the system.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean at all that what you're learning in India is obsolete, because your
Right.
basics are always going to be the same, right?
Right.
What I mean to say is like having an analogy that you have a car and you're using a manual car versus an automatic car. The basics of driving will not change.
Right.
So that is that all the schools are very well organized in terms of safety. There is no issue on that. So that's one thing which is very important to have a look. Second is that you need to see, there are a lot of students in India who are flying together. So what happens is that you cannot expedite your training. You
Right.
need to follow a particular sequence which you join in. So people generally who have cleared their exams and have passed, they get preference in flight. So that when they finish flying, it will be easier for them to obtain their license.
Okay. So related to the flying hours, which you touched upon, we have an audience question. It says that how many flying hour experience does a pilot need to be in the commanding seat, and which is a big challenge for pilot, takeoff or landing?
Okay. So I'll break it into two parts.
Yeah,
Again, the first question is that what is the experience required,
that's right.
right? So what happens is, now this will be a little bit technical. I'll try to be as simple as possible. So
Sure.
when you become a pilot, you join as a co-pilot, and when you're a co-pilot, you start logging your hours from the day you have started flying. Right?
Yeah.
Based on the experience on the person on the left, uh, it depends whether you can log those hours or not. Now, what happens in that format is that you need 1500 hours with a trained commander, which will be adding. So the first step I initially highlighted was 200 hours for your basic flying,
Right.
after which you will do your simulator flying,
Mm-hmm.
which will be around 30 to 40 hours, after which you will have around 1500 hours to get eligible for applying for an ATPL license. Generally, during this period, when you become a co-pilot till you attain your 1500 hours, what you generally students do is that they will start studying for their exams and they will start giving their exams.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this 1500 hours, basically what happens is that is not generally total 1500 hours. It could
Okay.
be around 2000 hours also. Because as I said, it is on experience based on the person who's sitting on your left, that whether
Right.
do it or not. Said that all airlines also have their own company policy of when they want people or pilots to be eligible for commanding an aircraft. Commanding an aircraft requires a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge, which today with the evolving technology, it's become difficult because it is very easy to, because there is a lot of automation in the system which is happening.
Right.
So airlines will put their own requirement. I know airlines which have gone up to 2,750 hours for, being eligible for flying in command. So that is one part of the question in how many hours you require.
Yeah.
And what was the second question you asked?
The second part was for a pilot, what is the biggest challenge? Is it a takeoff or is it a landing?
Okay. So there's a very famous saying what we use, that every takeoff needs to have a landing. Right?
True. True.
Generally people have this query that takeoff or landing is difficult. it's not about difficult or easy. Both have their own important aspects and both are very technically required. And that is the reason why this part has not been put on the autopilot, or there is no automation there to take control of these aspects. But generally, what happens is that the landing becomes more important because you are having a lot more uh, variations or variables which affect you. There is wind, there is weather around you, there is runway condition, there is braking which is required. So a lot more variables are there in the system which you will need to take care of rather than in takeoff. In takeoff, it's very simple. You're starting your car and you're pressing the accelerator.
True.
So that is what I would say.
Okay. So going to the next question, which is from the audience, are there some norms on license validity? If someone becomes a pilot, is there a expiry or is there a renewal process which one has to take care of? And
So,
in what interval it is required?
So yes, there is a renewal and there is a policy required. There are a lot of renewals required. It will become very long on the interview, but generally for a commercial pilot license, your renewal happens every year. And for an airline transport or an ATPL, you need to have every 5 years, which is happening a renewal. Now, between these renewals, these are only renewals of your license. But between these renewals, there are a lot of other proficiency checks which you need to do. Every year you need to have your simulator flying, which needs to be done. So that keeps on happening on regular intervals. So once those are current, then your license is current. And then you give your license for 5 years in case of ATPL and every year in case of CPL.
Right. So linking to the point which you mentioned about the simulator training, there is one more question from the audience which says that flight simulator and how useful it is for pilot training. Unlike your driving school where you get to sit on the driver's seat on the first day, I'm sure simulator training is utmost important in the aviation industry.
So the reason why simulators are being used is for two things. One is the cost of aircraft fuel is so high that if you want to do the whole training on an aircraft, no one is stopping you. No government is stopping you from doing that, or no aviation authority can do that, but you cannot afford it. Second, doing that, the aircraft, when you are training, there are going to be chances that you are going not you are training, so you're going to be damaging the aircraft.
Right.
The aircraft is so expensive that you will not be able to do that. So in a simulator, all those aspects are covered. Plus, why would you want to burn so much aviation fuel and pollute the environment where you can do it electronically? And today's simulators are so good. What we are using, they are as equal to an aircraft feeling. It gives you the exact simulation. In fact, everything is covered in the simulation.
Great.
Yeah.
So I'll pick up one more question from the audience. Can you talk about flap 3 landing?
Okay. So again, it's a technical question.
Yeah, we have a technical couple of technical people already on the forum, so we are getting these questions.
Great. So let's, for everyone's view, we'll make it simple. What is a flap? If you ever traveled and you have sat near the wing, you must have seen some surfaces which come out of the aircraft which opens up. Now the flap is basically used for two reasons. It has a different function when you are taking off, and it has a different function for landing. When you are taking off, the primary aspect of the aircraft or the pilot or the airline would be that I want to stay as much away from the ground. So when a flap is used for takeoff, it means that I want to climb faster. Now the same flap, when you are coming in for landing, is used for basically reducing your speed of the aircraft. The normal speed of an aircraft is around 250 knots, which is in cruise. But when you are landing, you are generally in the range of 120 knots. Now from 250 knots, how do you bring the aircraft down and slow it down? And that is how you would end up extending your flaps. Now, generally, all the commercial airline aircrafts which we fly have 4 flap levels. Okay, so that's 0, 1, 2, and 3. What happens is that as higher you keep on going, the fuel required and the deceleration you achieve is higher. Why? What is flap 3 landing is different, because they, over the experience of the aircraft manufacturer, they have realized that we could do the same thing at a lower flap. When using a lower flap, say a flap 3 instead of a flap full landing, what will happen is you will be able to save more fuel, and it is more better and more controllable at a lower flap. So that's the speciality. That is why it has some function of now it has become very significant, because airlines are very competitive in their pricing, and their pricing or their cost can be only reduced if they reduce the fuel cost. Fuel cost can be reduced by using a flap 3 landing, is how flap 3 landing is.
Thank you for providing this clarity to the audience. Moving on to the next question. You have a lot of experience of flying. I would like to ask you a personal question is, are there any incident or any thing which you would like to share it with our audience?
Of course, there are a lot of instances which happen in our day-to-day aspects, and it is there are a lot of funny ones also, and then there are, of course, amazing ones. I think this will be a good time to show you how our aircraft and our flight goes through, what we do, and a glimpse of how our world or our office is, I would say.
Sure. I'll start the video which has been shared by you. So would you like to share something about this experience?
Okay, so this was one of the flights which we had recorded when we were doing the Vande Bharat mission. The Vande Bharat mission, I know it's a very famous and it's the biggest evacuation mission which has happened from India in terms of getting our citizens who are abroad living in different countries. And Air India has been an integral part and the major player to be facilitating the government of India for bringing all our citizens back. This was a flight known to Tbilisi, which is in Georgia, and beautiful place, beautiful destination. I really didn't know that we had so many Indians in such a small city across the globe. And this is a time when in March 2020, the pandemic had just hit, and me and my crew, we were off to this aircraft. We were called for this flight, and it was amazing to see that how the airport was, because the airport was completely dark. The lights were not on. There was no security. There was not a single soul in the whole. Who was it? We were privileged to even be out on the streets at that time. Of course, we also were scared. There were a lot of protocols for health and all, but it was amazing. There was no one in the sky, no one on the airport. The runways were empty. The air traffic controllers were they were like, you are the only person who's flying in India. So that was the kind of situation which we generally see in movies when a pandemic hits. And we had our routing basically went from Bombay, overhead Pakistan, and we reached Georgia. And we got a lot of Indian students, which we came to know is a dentistry hub in Tbilisi. And it was amazing because all of them are waiting to be, coming back. They have been stranded there for so many months. And it was very fun because, and they all were appreciative about the fact that Air India has done such a great job, and given an option for them to come back. Otherwise, it would be almost another year before they could have even come back home. And on the flight aspect, you must have seen that we were doing a couple of things. We have how we have our driving steering wheel. We have the same way we do it electronically.
Right.
And that was basically a landing in Tbilisi, which you saw.
Right.
And you have a runway. We follow our instruments and we go and land, and of course park. It's a lot of things to explain. I would be happy to take this on for another hour and explain how the whole flight goes, but I don't think it would be right at this time.
Sure. Thank you for giving the overview on the Vande Bharat mission and your experience of an empty airport and empty airfield and the sky. It is really a great moment, and we are proud that we know someone who has been a part of Vande Bharat mission.
Thank you.
Yeah. So before we go into questions for general aviation and airline industry and stuff, one question which I would like to ask you is, as you are a pilot for Airbus 320, and there are airlines which are converting their passenger planes into cargo planes. Is there a additional requirement of training for conversion of your pilot license from a passenger pilot to a cargo pilot and things like that?
So we are basically trained for an aircraft, what material or what we are taking passengers or we are taking cargo, it really doesn't matter. But generally, cargo aircrafts are different, cargo airlines are different. So generally, it doesn't happen. It's just in COVID times that this has, it's a very odd exception which has happened. To facilitate pharma companies to be able to send more vaccines across the place and rather not sending an empty aircraft. The difference between a cargo aircraft and a passenger aircraft is that there is no seats in a cargo aircraft.
Right.
So they can carry way more cargo, which is possible. To give that facility to the normal commercial operators, this exception was passed.
Okay.
So no difference for us as a pilot.
Okay. Out of my previous organization experience, I would like to just take your views on this. So earlier I was working for refueling of aircraft, and there was a cargo flight which was taking off from Mumbai, and it was landing at CDG in Paris. So yeah, Paris. That's right. So I remember it clearly because the amount of fuel that aircraft has taken, it was a non-stop flight and a fully loaded. The fuel uplifted was around 2.5 lakh liters. So it's like an ocean. So if you can throw some light, I know it's a technical question that how is the judgment of the fuel done, and what would be the intake for different sectors?
So basically, again, there is a regulation in place which is required by every country. Okay. More or less, it's standard, but there might be some nuances. So first thing is that you basically your flight plan is required. Say you're going from, as you're driving also, if you're going from A to B, you will plan what route you're going to take, how much time is it going to take.
Right.
Now, along with that, it also means that in the sky, there's going to be traffic delays. There are going to be weather deviations. There's going to be wind, which is affecting. The major component which affects an aircraft. It could be either helping you by pushing you from behind, or it could be slowing you down if it is coming from the front.
Right.
With all these aspects, a flight plan is made in which, in a computerized way, every sector or every leg of a flight plan has a particular time and fuel which is decided. So this whole from here to say Paris, as you decided, it is going to be ticking. The other thing which gets affected difference is the type of aircraft, and that is why airlines are so particular, and they spend most of their time deciding what type of business they are doing and what type of aircraft they require. You take a wrong aircraft type, you are never going to make business or a profit in aviation.
Right.
So yes, it matters a lot because every aircraft fuel consumption is different, and you also want to see where you want to expand globally. Say if you're going from, you are a domestic airline, you do not want to go to say Gulf or Southeast Asia, you will take an aircraft which is only suiting domestic operations.
Right.
That is purely because of the fuel consumption.
Okay.
Right. In your example of Charles de Gaulle, Paris, what happens is that apart being a cargo, it might be having 4 engines. So the number of engines matter because they want to fly direct to such a long distance, which will be almost again a 11-hour, 12-hour flight. So the fuel required is one time uplifted. Otherwise, they would need to do a technical stop in between to uplift more fuel if ever required.
Right. Right. So you rightly captured it, Captain. The aircraft was a B747.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay. Now moving on to the general aviation aspect, we have a question from the audience. Is to start with is what is the meaning of VT on an aircraft?
Okay. VT, basically India was governed by the Britishers, and the story here goes that VT was basically India was termed as VT, which means for Viceroy Territory, and that the aircrafts which were so they used to bring a lot of aircrafts from abroad over here because Indian Maharajas used to have a lot of money, and it was a kind of a sport for them flying an aircraft. So that's when the initial aircrafts came. This Victor Tango, or what we call it, has come as a sign. So every country otherwise will have its own initial letters for marking the aircraft. This is known as aircraft registration marking. So every country will have their own 2 letters. India has its own as Viceroy Territory.
Okay. Thank you for the clarity on this. Yeah, the next question on the industry is recently we have heard that Tatas have taken over Air India. Is it a good move by Tatas to acquire Air India, or what are your views on this?
So whether it is a good move or not, time will say by Tatas. But the idea for Tatas taking over is primarily it is a company which Sri J.R.D. Tata had built, and now Ratan Tata ji has also taken over his dad's legacy that he wanted it back, because Air India, when it was started, was a private company, after which it was taken over by the government of India to be run by them.
Right.
So if you see, it's gone from the private hands to the government and coming back to the original owner is what is the word around.
Yeah.
Second thing, as a strategy, as a plan, today the biggest airline in India is Indigo, and if Tata wants to have a footprint in aviation, they will need to expand. Now, with limited number of parking slots, number of airport slots, and number of routes, and number of aircrafts, the only way to expand is to take over another company, which is what is currently happening. There will be a consolidation taking place over time where Tata would want to be competitive with Indigo because that is the only way he can succeed. That is what the move looks like as of now, that they will get all the routes, aircrafts, and parking slots from Air India, which will bring it at par to Indigo in terms of infrastructure, which is the biggest challenge for any airline who wants to grow.
Okay.
So in that terms, I think it's going to be a good move. It's of course in terms of privatization of a public sector undertaking company, it might not be a good move. But whether government should be doing this kind of business or not is still questionable. It is a personal opinion that how well governments can run this business. Also to highlight here is that apart from government running, it was a service. When government decided to start running the business, it was more of the fact that they had to make it affordable. That was the idea when they took over Air India. But today, maybe the market is matured. People have started earning more. Flying has become affordable. So whether they should run this business or any kind of business, that means. Plus, they also use these during evacuation. When we did Iraq evacuation, Kuwait evacuation, or SARS time, or COVID. These are things which private airlines are not going to do for you. That is a time when Air India has been always called to be the second line of defense after the armed forces. We are known as the second line of defense because anytime anything goes wrong, Air India is the front player who will be taking charge for getting or sending during this distress times.
Right.
So we'll see how all that plans out with the privatization happening.
Definitely. The times ahead will tell us.
Absolutely.
Right. Thank you. One question is we have heard that there are certain zones through which the aircraft are not allowed to be flown above. For example, the Rashtrapati Bhavan or some zones near the Everest. Can you throw some light on that?
So these zones are two types of zones are there, which we generally don't fly over. One are known as restricted zones. One, and the second one is prohibited zones. Prohibited by the term is used is you are not allowed. No one is allowed to fly over that zone.
Okay.
Right? That is like there are of course these designated spots like Rashtrapati Bhavan, Prime Minister's house, silence, Mountain of Silence in Mumbai. These are these places where no one is allowed for safety and security of the personnel who's living, or maybe some importance or significance of that place which is there. The first part which I was talking is the restricted zones. Restricted zones are those where you can fly over them. However, either you need permission from them or you need to be authorized to fly over that zone. And there has to be a reason why you're flying over that zone. You cannot just say, I want to fly over that zone. These restricted zones are usually defense airfields where there is a lot of government information which is stored, or there is fighter flying which is happening or training which is happening. So these restricted zones could be because of that, or it could also be because of mining, quarrying, maybe some kind of work which is going out, which they do not want to be exposed to the international world. So these are the two types of restrictions which you have in aviation for flying.
Right. So a couple of questions from the audience which I would like to take up is we have a question which says that why all the incidents are not been reported if there are some mishaps happening. So we have a question from Kaushik Bhai Sampat from Calicut, which says that This question is from him, and he says that the Calicut airport incident during pandemic was not heard of. And to add on to it, Paresh Bhai would like to add is, are there any special insurance policies for pilots or for the aircraft, and in case of mishap or hijack?
So what happens with the first question is that some incidences are not reported. Generally, it is not possible that it will not be reported. It might have not come out in the media because the media will only come out once the report is up.
Mhm.
What happens is once an incident takes place, inquiry committee is set up. There's a board, there's a specialized organization known as AAIB, which comes into action, and they basically form a committee. The committee will then go through the study, the whole process from the time the pilot has got up from his house. They will go all the way, what he did, what time he reported, what fuel did he take, what were the aircraft weather conditions. A lot of things happened during that time, and then after which the report is released, and that is the time when the media will come up with it. Yes, unless it's a very big accident like a crash, say the Calicut or the Mangalore crash, which is openly visible, they will cover it. But generally, the small incidences will be taken over after the report is out, because otherwise, what will happen is the media is passing a judgment for the person, and that is something which is not right. After the inquiry, you will actually know what was the reason of failure.
Right.
So that is one part. In terms of insurance, yes, we have separate insurances. We are insured by the operator or the airline which we work for. There are specialized aviation category insurances which are given by insurance companies. The aircraft is insured, the crew is insured separately, and the passengers are insured, and plus the cargo which you are carrying is also insured. So, and all this goes in with a third party insurance also. So just in case that any third party who was not a part of the aircraft also gets injured or gets damaged during this, they will also be covered for it.
Right, right. So the next, I would like to take up the last question from the audience, which has come up. There are a lot of questions which we would also like to hear from you, and the audience also would like to understand. But the last question which I would take up is like when you are flying and you have to contact the ATC throughout the world, wherever there is a contact, are there people who are English speaking, or how do you manage if there's a communication?
So generally, ICAO, which is the apex body of the International Civil Aviation Organization, which is the controlling authority in the world for civil aviation, they have made a minimum requirement that you have to have English as a language, which will be at least read and understood by all pilots. For that, there is a special license or a kind of a certificate you get. It's known as English language proficiency. Most of the countries, I would say majority, say 80% of the countries, they use English as the primary language for ATC conversations. Places like China or the East, they use their local language, but the ATC is very well conversed with English language.
Okay, great, great.
Because it's not only about you and you talking and understanding what the ATC is saying. By the information given by other aircrafts also, I would understand a lot as a pilot. So it's important that I can listen to them, I can understand what they're speaking, and maybe it could be helpful in my flight also.
Right, right. So a personal question which I'm sure many of the pilots would be getting: how does a pilot have a work-life balance?
Oh, that's a difficult one. So let's get this very clear that we have very disruptive schedules. We sleep at odd times, we get up at odd times, we work at different times. There are a lot of rules and regulations which govern our amount of duty we can do. What is the rest period required between two flights? Work-life balance, the good part is now with aviation growing so fast in India, companies are understanding that there is a fatigue level which a pilot experiences because of the compression and decompression which goes through when he's taking off and landing.
Right.
With that, they have given, they are trying to provide sufficient rest to the pilot. Other thing which I tell everyone who is entering aviation, that it is not possible for you to be able to attend all your functions, all your birthday parties, it's not going to be possible because you could be having a flight, right? You won't be available. It's a personal duty that you can try to plan as much as possible. Companies are very open to that. If you know that you're going to have a birthday party coming up in the next month, you can put a request off. You could probably select a flight in the morning and then have your evening free. You'll have to take that effort personally to try to maintain that balance.
Right.
But it is not difficult. But on said that, it is not very simple also.
Understood. We are already at 12:05. If you permit me, I can take up one last question.
Absolutely.
And yeah, so these days a lot of buzz is around the drones and the UAVs, and there are pilots required for flying those machines as well.
Correct.
So what are your views? Will that pilot training be equivalent to flying an actual aircraft, or how it will be useful for the person who is thinking of becoming a pilot? Whether it will be he can think of becoming a pilot of an actual aircraft, or he or she can think of becoming a pilot of a drone or a UAV.
So drones in India are very nascent stage, Dhaval. We have just probably sown the seeds last month. In fact, regulations are still being formed.
Right.
Because there are academies who are training drones and all. But there is a lot of difference between a drone pilot and a actual pilot. In terms of, a drone pilot is going to be on ground, an actual pilot is going to be inside the aircraft. So these two are very different career options. If I would highlight, the reason is that drone implementation is still very not known. As in, what is the application of a drone is still not known. Of course, defense has been using drones. Apart from that, abroad I've seen in the US they use it for crop spraying, agriculture functions, for video shooting.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of stuff they have been using. But in India, it's very, very basic as of today. So it's a good alternative, but it is, as of now, I would not know whether it is a career option to be taken, but it will come up as a career option.
Sure. I have missed out on one more question. I'm sorry, I'm adding on the questions. What are the other career opportunities in aviation if someone wants to join the aviation industry except for flying an aircraft?
Okay. So there are a lot of personnel required and associated with an aviation industry. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just talking about the more technical aspect. Apart from a flying crew, the second thing is that you could become a cabin crew or an air hostess or a purser is what an option is. That's one option. Then there is something as an AME, which is an aircraft maintenance engineer, which is again a technical job. You are clearing aircrafts, you are doing, and this does not always require your aeronautical engineering. It's a separate course like a CPL. You get a AME license. Then this is the part where these are all license category, which I've talked about 3 people. Apart from that, then there is operations. Then there is strategy consulting in aviation. There are specific people required for flight planning. Fueling department is different. There is a commercial department which takes care of for your airline ticketing, passenger handling. So all these multiple options are there. In fact, not recently, but 2-3 years back, airport management has become a very big requirement, because in India, airports are growing at such a high speed, but there are not good managers to be run airports. So that could be an option which you could have.
Great, great. So, Captain, I think we can end the conversation now, and I would like to thank you for all your time for this session. And as I would like to bring in one more saying, it is said that the engine is the soul, is the heart of the aircraft, whereas the pilot is the soul. So,
Absolutely.
yeah. So thank you for being the soul of this session, and thank you, audience, for joining in. We have a couple of questions which are unanswered. We would like to send it to you for your inputs. And we would also like to seek your permission that if any person who is aspiring to become a pilot, will it be good to share your contact details with them?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That
Thank
would be
you.
great.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your
Thank
time.
you for this opportunity, Dhaval.
Thank you. You are most welcome. You are most welcome, Captain. To the audience, thank you very much for joining in for today's session. On behalf of Team Drshtikon, myself, Dhaval Bhatia, Archana Sampat, and Vidhi Udeshi, take your leave. Thank you for joining in. Have a great day.